Claudio Castagnoli is All Elite. Jon Moxley is the interim AEW World Champion, and Jay White retains the IWGP Heavyweight Championship. AEW New Japan Pro Wrestling Forbidden Door is in the books. Was it a good show? Was it a bad show? It's time to get my review now here on SCW. And before we start, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and let me know your thoughts of Forbidden Door in the comments below. So to start things off, we'll quickly go through the buy-in. There was 4 matches on the buy-in in the first hour. A couple of those matches were quite stand-ups as well, though. We had Yoshihashi and Goto defeating QT Marshall and Aaron Solo. A sizable match. Shota from the Japanese Stars to pick up the victory there. QT Marshall had a couple of stand-up moments as well. One of them being a 450 splash where the pool was empty, and a questionable sort of flip over the top rope. He did manage to land the move okay, but it did look a little bit awkward as he hit it. But still, the New Japan Stars from Chaos did pick up the victory in what I thought was a solid opener. Lance Archer picked up a victory over Nick Comoroto. For me, this was AEW versus AEW. I know that Archer has been a part of Suzuki-gun previously. Is going to be part of the G1 as well this year. This is kind of what they do in AEW. They build up Archer for him to lose later on. It seems to be another part of that here. But for me, this belongs in AEW Dark Elevation. This didn't belong even on a buy-in of a pay-per-view in my personal opinion. But Archer picked up the victory in what was a fairly okay match. Swerve Strickland and Keith Lee picking up the victory next over Suzuki-gun members Desperado and Kamaru. For me, this was the standout match of the buy-in. Some really good solid moments here. Great attention to detail, going for Keith Lee's leg at every opportunity so that he was kind of unable to hit his big moves. As well as whiskey missed to the face as well. It's kind of the way that I drink whiskey as well, for being brutally honest. But despite not being on the same page just recently, Swerve and Keith Lee were able to pick up the victory. Say Swerve hitting a few big moves, and then we got the Big Bang Catastrophe for Keith Lee to pick up the victory. And in the last match in the buy-in, we had, of course, Max Caster of the Acclaimed and Gun Club going against New Japan Pro Wrestling's Dojo. But of course, we only had 2 members of Max Caster and Billy Gunn, because Danhausen came up on the screen, and of course the Arse Boys, if you want, went running to the back. But it's still 2-on-4. You see it as a disadvantage. They still picked up the victory. And for me, the Max Caster rap and just the Scissor Me Daddy-O is still one of the most entertaining things going out of this. So yeah, more of a comedy element than actually anything else. I'm guessing we're going to get the Gun Club and the Acclaimed going against Danhausen and Hook in the very near future. But yeah, all in all, this was a good bit of fun. What a cracking opener we had to start off the show as well. Shota, Umino, Eddie Kingston, and Wheeler Yuta on a losing effort against the Jericho Appreciation Society members Chris Jericho, Sammy Guevara, and as well joining them, of course, was Minoru Suzuki. Also, I really enjoyed the exchanges with Kingston and Suzuki, just, you know, slapping meat on the chest there. That was great fun to watch. Sammy Guevara doing an insane dive off the top rope as well. And I really enjoyed the story of Shota and Chris Jericho as well, because they actually played from Wrestle Kingdom. Of course, he was the son of Red Shoes, this big referee from New Japan Pro Wrestling. Jericho attacking Shota, of course, back in the Tokyo Dome at Wrestle Kingdom a couple of years ago. Like how they played into the story of the match. Of course, at one point, Chris Jericho had the Walls of Jericho put on him by Shota, but in the end, Jericho picking up the victory, pinning Shota with the Judas effect. And of course, this plays into storyline as well, because now the JAS do get the advantage going into Blood and Guts on Wednesday on AEW Dynamite, which of course is the way it should be done with these style matches. The heel should always have the advantage going in, so that made perfect sense. And just a continuity of narrative as well, just so Shota will probably need to get some revenge over Jericho again in future. Fireball was put in the face of Shota because, well, Chris Jericho, he's a wizard. Next was the winner takes all triple threat tag team title match. Of course, we had the ROH tag team titles, the IWGP tag team championships as well. FTR, of course, the champions for ROH. Of course, for New Japan, it was the United Empire with Great O'Khan and Jeff Cobb. And Roppongi Vice not really bringing anything to the table. And of course, I thought for just a brief moment that they actually may win the titles, because Trent had picked up a couple of big wins en route to this show. They'd always wanted to win those titles and never had done so. But that didn't happen. Of course, Dax Harwood picking up an injury earlier in the match. Of course, it looked like his shoulder popped out on one of his first moves. He actually had to be taken to the back, so Cash Wheeler was left on his own. But I actually thought this added to the match, because you got that big pop when Dax was able to come back down to ringside. And of course, it just made that victory for FTR all the more sweeter. And of course, now they've got 3 sets of tag team titles now. They've actually got the ROH titles, the IWGP, as well as that, they've even got the Triple R tag team titles. All that's missing now is Impact Wrestling Wrestling. Then they can go later on chasing the Young Bucks later in the year for the AEW tag titles, have all tag titles on the line, and who knows, maybe one tag team could have all sets of tag team titles. Talking about belt collectors, that could actually make FTR actually the best tag team in pro wrestling today, having every single one outside of WWE, and of course we know they've held them on multiple occasions before. It's certainly something I would be down for seeing if that is the booking direction that AEW want to go, certainly between now and All Out. But fingers crossed that Dax Hardwood is okay, that his injury was not too bad. Obviously he was able to come down and finish the match up, so he's also been advertised now for ROH Death Before Dishonor as well, which of course is taking place in July. So first thoughts are, hopefully he is okay after this show. Next up was the first ever All-Atlantic Championship match. Of course, Pac winning that match there, doing it for the UK. Good to see Pac picking up the victory. Of course, he's been around in AEW since the start as well, so good to see him finally win some gold, the first ever All-Atlantic Championship. Of course, he defeated Clark Connors as well with the Brutalizer submission hold to pick up that victory. I thought this was a fun fatal four-way. Miro dominating the first 2/3 of this match, constantly in the ring, but of course, he was taken out, put through a table on the outside by Clark Connors. I thought that they did a good job in this match as well, trying to get Connors over. There was a good chant for Connors at one stage in the match as well. Going into this one, I would have considered a relative unknown for most of the audience, unless you're a real die-hard New Japan fan. Of course, I don't think many would have known him. Of course, he replaced Tomohiro Ishii, who was of course injured, couldn't go into this match. So yeah, I mean, looking at it as well, as we got to the finish, it looked like Pac was actually going to submit as well to the game over from Miro. We had the black mist that actually went into the eyes of Miro from Malakai Black. Of course, then we saw sort of submission style move that was done from Malakai Black to Clark Connors. We see a 450 done from the top rope, like I say, from Pac, and then hitting that Brutalizer submission to get Connors to submit. For me, I thought this was a good match, and as it's the All-Atlantic Championship, I suggested this earlier on a video on the predictions. I'd like to see this championship actually defended outside of AEW. If Pac is not a full-time resident in the States and he spends time in Newcastle, England, why not defend it in the UK? Spread the word of AEW across different indie shows, maybe across Europe as well. That could be a good way to do that, and then of course maybe the championship could be lost over there or actually on AEW TV. But if it's going to someone that's on different parts of the world, like someone in future from New Japan could win this title, it's great to spread the word of All Elite Wrestling rather than having that championship there all the time, because in my opinion, I don't think AEW needs another championship at this stage. But certainly if you want to do a championship that's going to get more eyes to your product, then maybe this might not be a bad idea. Pac is a good representative for that championship, and for me is a great first choice to be the inaugural AEW All-Atlantic Champion, and good to see a Brit do it as well. Next, the dudes with attitudes picked up the victory over the Bullet Club. Of course, Shingo picking up the victory with the Last of the Dragon on El Phantasmo for the victory. For me, I thought this was a fun match overall. Once again, the Young Bucks being their obnoxious best, by the way, a part of the Bullet Club. They always do some of the most obnoxious work for them. Obviously, the cartwheels into the corner, I think that's going to annoy quite a few people in the wrestling community. And Sting as well, he can't help himself in the modern day. He's got to dive off of something, hasn't he, at his age? Darby Allin is clearly a bad influence on Sting, but what I can say is that I do think short term, I do think a tag title match could be on here, but I would expect the Young Bucks to retain when that match happens, potentially at Fight for the Fallen. And providing Adam Cole isn't out for too long with his concussion injury, we'll get to that very shortly, I could see Darby Allin versus Adam Cole at All Out later this year. Next, Thunder Rosa retained her AEW Women's World Championship against Toni Storm with a final reckoning. And nice to see her bring out a new move, of course, from her mentor Dustin Rhodes from his playbook, so it was nice to see that. But what I would say is this was the shortest match on the card. Still disappointing that that's always the case with the women's division in AEW. This match going around 10 minutes and 42 seconds if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, it's interesting to see what the direction will be going forward for these two ladies. It was a decisive pinfall as well. I hope Toni Storm now isn't going to get lost in the shuffle, because she's got too much talent to be wasted in All Elite Wrestling, in my personal opinion. Next had to be match of the night for me, Orange Cassidy against Will Ospreay. The sort of clash of styles just gelled together perfectly. The fact that Orange Cassidy, in his sort of slow kicks and lethargic way against one of the best high flyers and wrestlers in the world, and all ring styles really at this sort of point of his career, Will Ospreay. You just see the way that we see Orange Cassidy just mimic the style, sort of doing the back roly polies instead of flips, and doing the thumb up for Will Ospreay. The facial expressions as well, and the near pinfalls toward the end of this match were just fantastic. Beach break was kicked out by Will Ospreay. We see Aussie Open, of course, at ringside getting involved involved in the match on Will Ospreay's behalf as well from time to time. Of course, Will Ospreay hitting that sort of dangerous back elbow that he does, and we thought that'd be a pinfall victory. Of course, Cassidy kicked out, but then Stormbreaker was hit from Will Ospreay, picking up the win eventually. Of course, there was a beatdown, of course, at the end of the match with Aussie Open getting involved once again. Roppongi Vice coming out looking to try and make the save, but to no avail. But then Shibata coming out there, making a save for Orange Cassidy, but seeming more likely wanting to go against for the IWGP United States Championship. And I think that Shibata versus Ospreay seems a very exciting prospect to see that match in New Japan. And let's not forget as well, the previous champion, of course, Juice Robinson, was sitting in the crowd holding that championship because he still has the championship hostage, even though he is not the current champion. For me, there was bags of fun with this all around. Even the fact that Shibata was wearing Orange Cassidy's sunglasses at the end. This sort of whole segment, match, everything put together for me, probably the highlight of the show. Closely followed by a second match of the night for me, Zack Sabre Jr. taking on the mystery opponent, which of course was Claudio Castagnoli, of course formerly known as Cesaro in WWE. We was not disappointed with that mystery opponent, which is nice to see. Apparently, Claudio has got a long-term deal with All Elite Wrestling. I don't think it's the original plans they had to bring him in. Of course, Bryan Danielson was supposed to be in this role, taking on Zack Sabre Jr. But for me, Claudio coming in made a lot of sense. The Blackpool Combat Club as well is a great fit for him. He'll be part of Blood and Guts, of course, this upcoming Wednesday as well for the BCC. So I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to be put together in this match here for me. Technical masterpiece as always from Zack Sabre Jr. I think what he does is absolutely brilliant in the ring. Of course, he was flirting with disqualification every given opportunity as well, with the ref count to 5 on 3 different occasions before he'd finally let go or have to be pulled off of these moves. Of course, this has come after the start of the match where we saw Claudio hit sort of the Cesaro moves, if you want, very early doors with the neutralizer, but of course that didn't pick up the victory at the start, but he did pick up the victory, which I think was his finishing move from before joining WWE, the Ricola Bomb, which seems to be having 2 arms hooked underneath and flipping them over for like a power bomb. It looked pretty impressive, pretty exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing what Claudio is going to bring to All Elite Wrestling. For me, I thought this was a good start, and for me, we'll see what Blood and Guts brings. I think he will fit in the BCC as well. Let's not forget also that, he's had experience of being on side with Bryan Danielson in WWE, fighting battles against him as well, along with Jon Moxley when he was Dean Ambrose as well. So it can fit with that. William Regal was probably mentored him with NXT as well and watching from afar. So it does tick a lot of the boxes. Let's see what happens with this. I hope that Claudio is going to have a bright future in All Elite Wrestling. Quick last point as well before I go to the next match. Also, Zack Sabre Jr. didn't know who his opponent was going to be, so he's protected in defeat. That match against Danielson, at some point further down the line, is protected after this show, which is quite important in my opinion. Next was a match that was working its way to match of the night up until the finish. I'm talking about the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship match, the Fatal 4-Way. Jay White retaining over Kazuchika Okada, Hangman Adam Page, and Adam Cole. For me, this was a fun match from the start. Of course, Cole and Jay White realised they need to be on the same page. It was the only way they were going to pick up the win for the time being. Of course, it didn't take long before that double cross happened. Of course, Adam Cole did actually turn on Jay White. There's some cool looking spots as well during this match. Of course, Okada jumping over the guardrail to do the body drop on both Jay White and Adam Cole. Hangman Page doing a moonsault from the top rope, which was hit with a super kick on the face so perfectly as well. But as we got towards the finish, this is where the slight letdown happened after some big finishing moves were being done and broken up with pinfalls. It looked like the Rainmaker was going to be hit on Adam Cole. He sort of missed it, fell to the ground, then sort of the Switchblade Jay White hit his finishing move on Okada, and then instead of going to pin Okada, he went over to Adam Cole, rode him over, and just got the 1-2-3. Nothing really happened to Adam Cole for the freak out to happen. Now, of course, since then, we have learned that Adam Cole looks to have suffered a concussion in the match, which is a real shame because he was injured going in as well, and of course now probably is going to be off our TV sets for a few weeks, so it makes perfect sense now that they changed the finish and perhaps made the most sense to get out of there, so Adam Cole could get the medical attention as soon as possible. We did see medics in the ring after the match along with Kyle O'Reilly and the Young Bucks, so it does all add up. But of course there was a bit of a quiet factor amongst the arena. Kind of was unsure of why this match would finish at this particular moment and why the fall was done on Cole. But of course, if he was concussed, he couldn't really go through any action, I would have thought here. But yeah, overall, the right result for me, Jay White retaining. It just was a shame with the way that the finish was, and it's a shame that there's been even more injuries during Forbidden Door than just onto the build of it as well. It really has been very unlucky with injuries in All Elite Wrestling and New Japan as of late. But all in all, up until that finish, this was a fantastic match between these four athletes, and the star power in this match alone was enough to make it a big fight feel. Then it was main event time. Jon Moxley winning the AEW Interim World Championship, defeating Hiroshi Tanahashi. Thought it was a solid match between these two. It was years in the making. We've wanted to see this match. Of course, Jon Moxley was brutalizing Tanahashi at early points of the match, putting him through a table on the outside. Kevin Kelly, who had been superb on commentary all night, and actually said how Tanahashi had a match against Kenta at Wrestle Kingdom earlier this year. All the toys had come out to play sort of this sort of more hardcore style. That's not his type of wrestling, not the way he wants to go. But as the match sort of progressed and turned, Jon Moxley was the one that ended up doing the bleeding in this match. It looked like Tanahashi was going to pick up the victory until Jon Moxley was able to kick out of his finisher. And of course then, Jon Moxley brutalizing, taking over, looking to sort of have like that rear chin lock on. Didn't get Tanahashi to go asleep with it, but instead hit a paradigm shift for the 1, 2, 3. A good match for me. It was spot a little bit in the middle, with the fans sort of being a bit distracted at one point. You could see they kind of had to kind of slow the action down. There seemed to be some sort of altercation going on in the crowd, and of course you had the fans looking in that direction. I'll keep it PG, saying you messed up. So clearly something was going on. But all in all, for me, I thought it was a good match. And of course, at the end of it, just to close off the show, the JAS coming down to beat down Tanahashi and Moxley. Ended up being the JAS against the Blackpool Combat Club, Proud and Powerful, and Eddie Kingston to close off. And of course, Claudio coming clean in house there to close off the show. They're just building for Blood and Guts on AEW Dynamite for Wednesday. Eddie Kingston seems very unhappy. Was made reference as well in commentary that Eddie Kingston were even less happy that Claudio is in this match. I'm not too familiar with their previous, but certainly would like to know more about it. If you do, let me know in the comments below. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it will go down. For me, this was not something that was actually a necessity to close off this show, but I understand why AEW did it. For me, overall, I thought the show, for me, as I'm going to say, as always, these shows are a bit long for my taste, but I do think that it certainly delivered. I think a lot of the matches delivered on this show as well. All in all, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 for me personally. I say match of the night goes to Will Ospreay, Orange Cassidy. I think Claudio and Zack is a close second. And I did actually really enjoy the opening match of the main card, the 6-man tag with the Jericho Appreciation Society and Suzuki going against Wheeler Yuta, Eddie Kingston, and of course Shota, Umino as well. But that's my thoughts of it. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. What did you think of Forbidden Door? Keep an eye as well with more videos dropping on the channel, including ROH Death Before Dishonor. That's right, Ring of Honor is making a return this summer. Find out the date of the show, where it's going to be held, and my match predictions as well for the card. But that's all from me. Please like, share, and subscribe. I look forward to chatting to you in the comments. How did you find Forbidden Door AEW New Japan in 2022? For me, I thought it was a solid show.